Hello folks, Jay Haft here, episode number 9 of Beaver Dam, the state of Wisconsin, a corrupt criminal enterprise. And this is a true American horror story. I'm going to show you the sign again, like I usually do. Please help what you can. If you can call these people, put on your speed dial, call them up daily. Unless we do anything about this, there'll never be any changes here in America. And these are all my opinions. And I'm going to start out, I'm going to read some terrorism definitions. Domestic terrorism, violent or criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups who to future ideological goals stemming from domestic influences such as or those of a political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. And then environmental terrorism. Terrorist organizations destabilize governments through violent and coercive acts that include water resources as a target. And then this is from the Environmental Protection Act. There's a group called ELPC. Attorneys and advocates implement, enforce, and defend the Clean Water Act. We hold polluters accountable and fight to clean up the Midwest water. Okay. And the Environmental Protection Act and the environmental terrorism will come into play later in this, not this episode, but in upcoming. This is a letter from the city of Beaver Dam. Has the city thing up on here. It says, this was a thing for the alderpersons, November 21st, 2008. That was after the flood, like 5 months after or something, somewhere in that area. Okay, to alderpersons, it is our belief that cities downtown will change dramatically in the near future. How we manage this inevitable change will be key to the area's future viability. And then public safety. This is kind of interesting. It says, this is immediate concern that one or more floodway structures could collapse in the river. If a collapse were to occur, the effects to neighboring properties, downtown area in general, could be devastating. Future claims of liability would likely reach many entities and costly to resolve. And it says DNR intentions. The DNR state that will require removal of 11 properties that is identified to be in the floodway. The fact they have not offered a definite timetable for when the buildings will be ordered down leaves the city in a difficult situation. I don't know if they ever come and clean to them because they haven't done it in 20 years. And properties targeted by the DNR are unlikely to invest in maintenance and improvements. The city chooses to employ and wait the clock out approach to the removal of these properties. The result will likely be continued deterioration of the already blighted center of the downtown district. In addition, property owners considered by the DNR to be in the flood fringe. And I was explaining this earlier, how these people have been living a lie all these years. To be in the flood fringe cannot currently undertake improvement projects for the lifetime of their property. So they can't really do, this is one of their cons, that basically undertake any improvements. That 50% rule of the property's value. If left unaddressed, the situation will virtually assure deterioration and accelerated downtown blight. And then they have on here, they're worried about the community image. The downtown area is one of the faces of Beaver Dam. What is currently an area in need of improvement could become an area of embarrassment for the city if proper actions aren't taken. Well, I look at this, and this whole city thing is an embarrassment. Okay, so now these fraudulent statements they gave these flood fringe owners, they have to live with this. And they've been living with this all this time. City hasn't came out and told them the truth about their properties, that the only thing that goes against your amount of money you can stick in it is your structural repairs. So, if you own one of those properties, they have families, they have children. It's a perfect example how the DNR has rained, a wrath of terror across the community. So if they want to sell their building, they want to sell it to somebody, they have to tell them, that this is how much money they spent in the building. And if you buy it, you can only stick this much money in it. And then it affects the appearance of the downtown, which they're supposedly concerned about. Now, see, these are the citizens of your community, and how they could do that. Okay, so this is an article I read off the DNR's laws, floodplain ordinances and stuff. And it's one of those things that, this is what they've been, this is the law. And that what they've been basically doing, like when Fairchild tried to fix his building stuff. So it's up there. And you'll see in here that they explain that my building and Fairchild's building share what they call common wall. We share pillars and stuff. And they said that, public safety is an issue here. But then why don't they want saying something and doing something are two different things. Down at the bottom, considered ordinary maintenance, alterations, repair, and maintenance done under emergency conditions to preserve or protect life and property. And you'll see that's what he did, and now you're going to see that's what I did, okay? So what I did was they had the inspection report, and they come in and they fine-tooth comb trying to find everything wrong with your building. That one of my pillars was washed out and one was slightly washed out. So I went to the city and tried to get a permit, and this will explain, all these DNR emails will explain all this. So I had a friend of mine, James Underhill. He's a great American. He's a Army veteran. He was an Army Ranger. He helped me fix the building. So we went and bought a bunch of sheets of plywood, some like fencing stake. We set up a cofferdam in there. I think it was like 15 bags of concrete. We mixed up in my basement, and I have a manhole, and dropped this buckets of cement down in there, and then filled and reinforced the concrete pillars and touched up a couple spots. And this was done as a public safety thing. They should say, yeah, Jake, go ahead, do it. It's a great thing. That building next door to yours is ready to collapse. So these are some DNR emails that involve with that, and they explain everything that transpired. And okay, City of Beaver Dam would like to schedule another meeting, this time with Jay Hafe, the ER bar. Again, he said that we should have the correct staff. The meeting would like as soon as possible. Jay is now saying he wants to stay. So they brought in like 8 people. They tried to coerce me into selling my building for my assessed value and not paying me just compensation. And I didn't fold because I've been under constant threats, fear, and ultimatums. The DNR has this reign of terror across the community. And I was the biggest hit by this because the constant threats, fear, and ultimatums, we're going to order your building down, this and that, you're going to get no money for it. And, it's just a constant reign of terror across the community. Not just the Flintford owners, the other property owners, me. So it says here, this is from Rob Davis and Jim Congdon, Kenneth Johnson. It is my understanding that he placed fill on the bed of his river to stabilize around his pier. Inspection services told me that he did the work, which I did. I admit, I'm not afraid to admit it. I did the right thing. Can I agree that if he does not continue toward removal, that we should proceed with enforcement, since he now has a violation, especially if he turns down a buyout deal? It was like ultimatums to me. He is claiming the city is responsible for the increase in the size of the pillars on the buildings, that the larger pillars caused a lot of the damage. Based on what Jim and I saw when we were under his building, it is clearly on the bed of the river, so regardless, the building cannot legally exist, even though it's been there for 100 years. Jim said, Jim, could you please decide who we think should be at the meeting and try to set it up with Trent Campbell, and then they have his cell number. And then this is Rob Davis on the bottom. And the thing I'm trying to get to on here is, the constant reign of terror from the DNR against me, Okay, so this is another DNR email. All these conspirators on here to commit blackmail, basically, because they're not paying. They want to pay me just compensation. From Ken Johnson, James Condon. Jim, we probably need to let Lloyd in on this. And it says, I will work on setting up another meeting between, the conspirators against the citizens of the community. City Beaver Dam, like to schedule another meeting. It's time with Jay Hafe to the bar. And then it says there's some other stuff down there. My understanding, he placed fill on the bed of his river to stabilize around his pillars. Inspection Service told me to do the work. Can I agree that if it does not continue toward removal, we should proceed enforcement action since he now has a violation? It's kind of the same thing. But, what I did was in the best interest of public safety. It was an ordinary repair. Because they admitted that they were worried about the building collapsing next to Fairchild's building. Okay. This is another one. This is from Dan Hunt. to James Congdon, Robert Davis, subject emotional rescue bar. That was the name of my building before I worked for my historical status. This is an FYI, basically for your information, for everyone. I just met with Jay Hape, owner of Emotional Rescue Bar, one of the buildings over the Beaver Dam River. He wants to make repairs to one of his pilings under his building, which is connected to the Michael Furchow building next door. Apparently this piling is under ER, but it holds up part of the Furchow building, the one that's ready to collapse. I told him we can't approve a structure in the water like that and would consider a violation, but because it's a safety issue and knowing the owners and the city are working to get the structures out of the river, we will use our discretion and not pursue enforcement at this time, just like we did with the Furchow building. He admits that it's helping support Furchow's building. The one that they said immediate collapse, it could flood the city, and in a worst case scenario, found the foundry. This is from Robert Davis to Dan Hunt, October 15th. And it's, I got another call from John at Inspection Services. He said he's concerned that if he issues a permit that he'd be setting a precedent that he doesn't want to set. You don't want to set a precedent that people should be allowed to fix their building in basically under an emergency condition. I don't know. It's just an example of how the city, the mentality, how they operate, and how they try to ruin me. He said generally in a case like this, he would tell the owner that they would need a Chapter 30 permit before he can issue a permit. The only way around it that he could think of would be if the engineer's report shows the only work being done is to grout the riverbed and not to repair the piers, and that he felt like maybe they would not need to issue a permit. And then down the bottom, it says from Rob Davis to Dan Hunt. Just got a call from Inspection Services about this. City and the DNR working together again. Jay went to them for permit, and the building inspector was confused why we'd allow Jay to do the work and not Michael. I explained to him Jay's situation was being handled the same as Michael's, and they did not give him a permit or permission to do work, but we would use only our enforcement discretion as long as we're now moving toward removal of buildings. I followed it to, like I said, it's the worst government money can buy. These are all related to this. This whole thing is going to be on this violation on here because it's quite a bit. This is from Ken Johnson, CC Robert Davis, subject Beaver Dam floodway property owners. Mr. Baldwin, we're always a little reluctant to talk about specifics of ongoing enforcement cases, but we are moving. We have begun the process concerning the ER bar. We're preparing a notice of violation letter and referral package to the Department of Justice. I would either expect a letter to happen sometime next week. We have not done anything with the 151 Front Street. And I was under impression the city was still pursuing this property, as I'm misinformed. That's that Ton Anton that left his building because, he was under blackmail and fraudulent statements. It says, our last conversation with members of the DNR is my understanding the orders for removal would be sent to the remaining property owners. My comfort level with the entire downtown project, as well as funding, when will removal letters to be sent to these property owners? It's from Robert Baldwin. He's watching the violation real close, Robert Baldwin. Okay. This is another email from Ken Johnson to Robert Baldwin, James Congdon, Robert Davis, Thursday, October 7th, 2008. Mr. Baldwin, thank you for meeting with us all. I cannot say that we would be taking independent, immediate enforcement action on the destruction of the floodway. Legally existing violations of state law could be subject to enforcement at any time. Obviously, we haven't taken action over the last several decades, several decades, but could have. Even when the city received funding for it, at least twice by then, I believe. The pertinent issue would be appear to be when we pursue an action. In my opinion, enforcement action taken through the courts would be successful, but I won't commit to when. Clearly, we would not permit continuing maintenance on the foundation of the structures. If the owners were to pursue work on the foundations of these structures, it may accelerate enforcement action. Well, the is another example. I mean, public safety means nothing to them. This is from Ballwig to Kenneth Johnson. Thanks for your input to meeting with us concerning downtown issues. As you're aware, the City of Beaver Dam committed working to resolve the issues related to the past flooding for everyone's benefit. Yeah, how about the Wyco building? Who really benefited from this more than anybody? Out of our meeting, I wish to confirm what and it basically says kind of like the same thing. But it's just, it's amazing how Ballwig is involved with all this stuff. He was on the city council and then the Beaver Dam Area Development Corporation. Okay, this is another DNR email here involved with this here. James Condon to Robert Davis, Pam Cover, and then subject, contact Mayor Kennedy about the NOV, it's called Notice of Violation. Pam is hoping to mail it tomorrow. I'm not sure if you heard or not at our meeting last week with all this side conversations that we were going on. But Mayor Kennedy requested to be contacted when the NOV comes out. Can you please let me know when the letter comes out? Thank you. And they did contact the mayor, and you'll see how he sent his press releases out, you know, because Jay Haft, he's a criminal. He gets a violation because he fixed his building. He did what was right for the community. It just blows your mind. This is from Lloyd Egan's, Dan Hunt, James Condon, Robert Davis, Barb Pellicek, Linda Hanfeld, Kenneth Johnson, January 28th, Dan Hunt. And it says, FYI, for your information, the letter to Mr. Haft has been mailed. He should get it today or tomorrow. And on the bottom, from James Condon to Steve Wester, he was the one that did the WDS, who did the whole project downtown. I will plan to attend the meeting. I will pass the information to the others. I think this meeting and tour will be very helpful. Thank you for the invite. So they're constantly meeting with the DNR, you know, and conspiring to ruin Jay Haft. Well, here it is. WXRO radio. And it came out in the paper too, but I don't have that available. But I want you to see this. It says DNR issues ER notice of violation. The owner of Fountain Inn Beaver Dam has been issued a notice of violation from the Wisconsin DNR. The tavern at 203 Front Street, formerly known as the Moster Rescue, is one of 11 buildings constructed over the Beaver Dam River that is targeted by the city and the DNR for demolition because such structures are in violation of state statute. Haft is the only property owner who has refused to sell this building, was recently placed on the state historical registry. What's kind of interesting is, I'm going to get to the violation in a little bit. They sent me that to me the same day that I got my historical status. It's quite timing. The letter dated January 27th informs Haft that the department has the power to impose a forfeiture on the building infringing the public rights related to navigable waters, even though they just said they haven't done it in decades. The letter states the DNR is aware that the building was recently placed on the state historical registry and will comply with the historic registry process in seeking enforcement. The DNR's next step is to request a referral to the Department of Justice requesting court order removal of his building with the cost of demolition paid by the property owner. More threats, fear, ultimatums, just constant. Haft had no reaction to the letter, but tells us he will sit down with the DNR next week regarding the matter. Mayor Tom Kennedy provided the council with the copies of the letter during an update on the redevelopment of last night's city plan. Both Kennedy and Haft acknowledged that this process could be drawn out for years. This is our DNR email from Linda Hanfeld, Pam Cover, Ken Johnson, James Condon, all the kingpins in this whole thing. Yeah. It's from Pam Cover to Linda Hanfeld, Dan Cover. Ken Johnson, Jim Condon, and myself are involved with Mr. Haft. Please direct the city attorney to Ken or our attorney, Edwina Kavanaugh. And on the bottom it says, I have included in our enforcement specialist in this case. She has some information. I don't know where this is in the enforcement process. I thought Jim Condon would at least have a handle on how the Haft enforcement situation is moving, so don't think about forwarding it to others. And it says, and on the bottom here it says, I am not in the loop on this. I am CCing others who may be. Ken Lloyd Mark. Okay. Like I said, all this stuff, it just blows your mind. So here it is. Jay Hape, this honest person, he's a notice of violation. So, and you'll love the next one. So it says basically here, I got this January 27th, 2009. And I'm just going to read this important part. It says, on October 14th, Dan Hunt, 2008, water management specialist, met with you regarding your plans to place rock and concrete on the pilings of your building. Mr. Hunt stated that the DNR could not approve plans for parastructure located in the riverbed. Temporary stabilization projects were done to fill voids in the Beaver Dam River that formed around the columns. At that time, no enforcement action was taken because the temporary stabilization areas were working department city representatives with plans to ultimately remove the structure. Okay. I'm going to show you the whole thing here. If you want to read it or not, it's just a bunch of BS, but they put this in the paper, and whatever we can to ruin Jay Hape. He's this terrible person because he fixed his building. I mean, what has the country come to? I mean, these people, if they want to come to your town, the DNR say, no, you can send us money, but don't come to our town because they're going to terrorize the citizens of your community with the help of the city. Okay, this is from Dan Hunt to Megan Carell, Pam McCulver, Barbara Wolf, James Conley, Gary Hendricks. And this is a Hape phone call. And this is what Dan Hunt says. I just got a really weird phone call from Jay Hape. First he was talking about historic structures in the floodway, then the floodplain. Then he said it's in NR 30, and I finally figured out he meant chapter 30. He then asked me if I had read the public trust doctrine. I told him there's no doctrine to read. It's a series of court decisions. Then he tried to tell me this amendment to the state constitution for small businesses to allow them to flood-proof and fix cracks in their foundation, which I thought that what I read because I constantly searching, trying to save my life from these criminals. I wonder if he's talking about the exemption chapter 30 for historical or cultural boathouses. I just wanted to share this with you. But the most important thing is I looked on, I couldn't find this public trust doctrine because it doesn't exist. There's nothing to read. They put me in violation of something that doesn't exist. Can you believe it? Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So this is how your city and your DNR work together to try to blackmail me out of my property. And all I ever asked for was just compensation. Yeah, they have a problem with the Constitution of the United States that says that you must pay just compensation for any property taken that receives public and or federal assistance. So call these people up. I mean, what's left of our country we can save if people do something about it. They need to come into Beaver Dam, check out their finances, check out this, and the DNR, they owe the flood fringe property owners money. They cost them money. They cost them stress, their livelihood. I mean, but it's unbelievable. And thank you.